Into a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to have an overview of the Egyptian stability, the Egyptian growth politically and economically, in light of President Sisi actually inaugurating the counter-terrorism command at the east of the Suez Canal. We're also going to be talking about the economic developments taking place in Egypt. And joining us here in the studio tonight to shed more light on these issues is engineer Samir Riad, member of the Egyptian Industrial Federation. We're also joined by Dr. Sharif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion, let's check out this report regarding President Sisi inaugurating the new counter-terrorism command at the east of the Suez Canal, and we'll be right back.
Dressed in military uniform, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated the east of the Suez Canal Counter-Terrorism Command. The President was briefed on the forces and the command's facilities before he visited the east of the canal command's headquarters, where tactics for Operation Sinai 2018 are planned. Sisi was also briefed by the Army Chief of Staff Mohammed Farid on the results of the operation over the last 15 days. The President clarified that the current operation in Sinai already began in 2014 and will carry on until 2022, and said that Sinai's development expenses are expected to reach 225 billion Egyptian pounds, a huge figure that requires the solidarity of all Egyptians. He vowed anew to protect all lands of Egypt and rein in terrorism, stressing the significance of development in Sinai along the ongoing military operation to clear it from terrorists. Several top state and army officials attended the event, including the Prime Minister Sharif Ismail, Minister of Defense Shadi Subhi, Army Chief of Staff Mohammed Farid, amongst others. The inauguration comes during the ongoing comprehensive Operation Sinai 2018, which was launched on 9th of February by the Egyptian Armed Forces to counter terrorism. The inauguration of the Eastern Suez Canal Counter-Terrorism Command also comes within the framework of developing the armed forces' capabilities to carry out their sacred duty of protecting the homeland with maximum efficiency. Last week, the army said 71 terrorists had been killed and more than 1,000 targets destroyed since the start of the ongoing anti-terrorism operation. Sinai 2018 involves land, naval and air forces as well as the police and border guards. The operation targets terrorist and criminal elements as well as organizations. On Thursday, the Armed Forces spokesperson Tamer al-Rifai said that since the launch of Operation Sinai 2018, the state's ongoing security campaign against terrorists, 71 terrorists have been killed and 5 others arrested. The number of arrests does not account for the 1,852 that were arrested on suspicion of supporting terrorists or for being listed as wanted criminals. Among the ranks of the armed forces, Rifai said the operation has resulted in 7 deaths and 6 injuries. He also said the military forces have so far destroyed a total of 571 targets. During his visit to the police academy, President Sisi said the public needs to be reassured in terms of the capabilities of local police forces as the prime enforcers of security. He said policemen have an array of qualifications which enable them to carry out the task of protecting the country efficiently. He also gave a speech to the academy students, stressing that they have to uphold and reflect noble military values.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion right away. Dr. Amir, first of all, before starting to talk about the inauguration of the new command in the east of the Suez Canal, how would you evaluate the performance of the Sinai Operation 2018 taking place over the past few weeks? We've heard many arrests, many confiscations, killing a lot of terrorists and arresting many more. How would you evaluate the performance so far over the past few weeks?
Well, it's very clear now that our armed forces are having a mission titled "To Be or Not to Be" for whole Egypt. They carry the destiny of a nation in this operation. I think that there was a very well-studied strategy. We have seen the first week that there was targets with some minimal results. And then some people were asking the question why we didn't hear the numbers that we're hearing today. It's just because our armed forces were addressing a blockade. And the blockade is giving now the new facts that we are having. Now the terrorist elements are all surrounded, air, sea, and ground. And now our forces are proceeding in the next step. The public should understand what's going on in these operations. So the first operation, it was logic to address a blockade and to close all the possibilities for all these terrorists to get out of the country, or maybe to have some reinforcement and infiltrations into our borders. I heard General Higazi, Muhammad Higazi, when he was talking to the chief, supreme chief of our armed forces, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, when he asked for extension of the period of these operations, he emphasized a very important problem, that there was some tunnels constructed under the civilian houses. And these were full of arms and explosives. And that's why we think he asked for more extension of this period of eliminating terrorism there, because there is a third step that will be taken. And he said the architect force, the engineers there in the armed forces will work to dismantle all these tunnels. And we are working not to harm the civilians. So I think that the steps are very well studied. It's not a random attack or a ferocious attack like that. No, there was a blockade, first step. The second step, the elimination of all the operational elements on the ground who are conducting the terrorist movements in Sinai. And the third thing, it will be now the dismantling of their underground infrastructure. I mean by that the tunnels and all the storage of the arms. So I think that the results are excellent, because it's very logic. There is a mechanism. According to this mechanism, our army is working, and I think we are in good hands. We gained an experience in combating terrorism. And I think that we're doing fine, and we will do much better in the coming days. But I always repeat in all the analysis, let's not hasten the results. It would not happen in a day. President Sisi said that all these attacks against Egypt were planned outside Egypt 15 years ago. He said, we started working on it just a few years ago when he was elected. So imagine a plan that was put in the think tanks and the intelligence services outside Egypt for 15 years. The money that was paid, the elements were trained, and the arms were supplied. Imagine the effort that we should do now to eliminate all this land, this vast desert, with civilian population. It's a hard task, but I believe that we are capable to do it.
Yes, definitely. And as hard of a task that is, there's also the development of the Sinai Peninsula as a whole. The President said that the developmental process would last until 2022. And with such great challenges for the armed forces and our security forces to eliminate and counter terrorism, how much of, or how big of a mission it is to actually develop the Sinai Peninsula?
This is a very important issue. Unfortunately, we neglecting Sinai Desert since 1973, and we didn't develop it to the right way. There was a lot of plans, there were a lot of intentions, but nothing much has been happening, and it became a weak thing, you know, in our politics and in our security. Egypt is 1 million square kilometer. It is a very big country. It is twice as big as the German before the war. Germany, you know, Germany before the war there were about 420,000 square meters. Egypt is 1 million, you know, and that's why to develop everywhere and so on. is needed. And unfortunately, we live only on 6% of our country. And we should extend our development and so on to Sinai Desert, definitely to secure our border and to definitely not to give, these people, the chance to threaten us. We need stability in this country. We need our, future as well to be secured, our presence to be secured, our sons and daughters has to be in safe country, and our country has been always safe and is blessed by God, know. And definitely what is done these days, it is fantastic, I would say. And our image, in terms of, that people will not come to Egypt because of the insecurity, I hope that this will be demolished completely, and it will be definitely, we need the stability for tourists' sake, for our sake, for the future too.
Yes. Well, as you've mentioned, we inhabit about 6% of Egypt's size, but also the development in Sinai amounts to about the same percentage of the space and the area that we actually inhabit. Do you think that 4 years is enough to actually develop an area the size of an already existing Egypt?
We don't need to develop it all, but at least our existence there, it will help a lot to enable us not to let such people to penetrate into Sinai Desert and create it, a threat to us, because definitely the neglection of Sinai Desert gave these people and give our enemies the chance to do so, And I just, wondered why we didn't develop it all these years. It was a plan. Everything was planned against us, And definitely now, that we are looking for it and we are correcting it. I'm more than happy to see things are done this way.
Yes. Well, Dr. Amir, what is the significance of the inauguration of President Sisi to the new command at the east of the Suez Canal? We've seen the president actually paying attention to the armed forces, whether if it's this inauguration or the surprise visit to the military academy last week. How would you evaluate, or what is the significance of this sort of attention at this time around?
Well, if we go back in time, let's not forget that President Sisi inaugurated also a command center in our western borders. It was in the name of General Mohammed Naguib, President Mohammed Naguib, and it was near Marsa Matruh. So now at the eastern border we're doing the same thing. So once again, that means that there is a mentality of making Egypt secure by all means, and Central Command. And when our president goes in there in the military uniform, that means clearly that we mean business, that he's going there, he's in command, and that this command center for fighting terrorism, it's meant to be a fortress, let's call it like that. In the ancient times was always like that, a fortress on our eastern borders. It will be used to gather information. You have seen, for example, states in the Middle East, whether in Israel or in Turkey even, they are all constructing a fence on the borders of... we have another plan, is to have a central command, an Eastern Central Command, as we have two fleets in the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, we have also central commands. And President Sisi, I think that he will not let it just be inaugurated like that. It will be functional as something very important for Egypt's security. He will be following it. It's under his command personally. So I think that means that Egypt is in Sinai. We will not leave Sinai. We would not retreat. On the contrary, as many experts saw that we were going to leave it because it's under the terrorist control, we are telling them you were wrong. We are constructing our central command. We have the chief of staff there giving the data accurately to our president, and the armed forces is there. The central command is a very important sign to the enemies. It means that you're not leaving this land and you're not being weakened by all what's happening. On the contrary, you're imposing your control and you're telling the world that our sovereignty is a priority. And as President Sisi said it, we have to die first as armed forces so they can come in. So this is he's showing us the word that he said, that we're constructing a central command with the forces, and this will be our fortress. It won't be a fence, it will be a strategy command. And well, it's just a sign to all our enemies and friends that Egypt is a stable country, that it has its command everywhere, east, west, north, south, everywhere, and that whenever these terrorist elements will come back, well, they will be met with a harsh response. But let me emphasize something. President Sisi, at the last conference, he had a clear message that the job is not yet done, because he said that we are discovering new info and new data throughout the campaign. And more we advance, there is more info we are getting that we didn't know before. And we have to be proud to have a president like that telling us the reality. He's saying we didn't know about many things, and still we don't know some things. So it means that we are all laboring and working for it. Yes. So the Central Command will gather all the info and will be a fortress for Egypt's eastern borders.
And having these central commands at the east of the Suez Canal and the western borders, does it translate in having more personnel and more weaponry in these centers?
I think that justifies why we had our armed deals lately. We have the Mistral, and we have the Frem, and we have the also we have bought many of our new submarines. So that means that we are capable of doing it. Egypt is a hot spot, and we have seen that thanks to our armed forces, there are plenty of personnel and well armed, we are still standing. Let me tell you a brief story. Yesterday I was watching international media, and it was showing the Syrian refugees in Athens, and there were young people in the ages of 17 and 20, and they were in drugs and prostitution there, young men. And I said, fortunately, we had this deployment of arms, of people, and they have the will to fight till death, till martyrdom. So I think that deploying the personnel, deploying all the arms, it's worth it. Just look around us. We are the only country standing. Why? Because we had the force to stand and to resist.
Yes. Well, Engineer Riad, talking about the development of the Sinai area, the President said that this would cost around 225 billion Egyptian pounds, and he called for Egyptians, patriotic Egyptians and businessmen to actually help fund and donate money in the Long Live Egypt Fund. How much of a step, or how much do you think this will be achieved by the Egyptian citizens and businessmen?
Definitely the Egyptian people, what is going to be, developing in the Sinai Desert, this is in the favor of the Egyptian people. The government is representing the Egyptian people, and whatever it is done, it is for the sake of our present and future. And definitely, I believe, that developing Sinai Desert is one of the priorities of the Egyptian people, because we don't want to be invaded, or to be, our border to be, invaded by anybody, from outsider or our neighbors. And we learned definitely few lessons now by neglecting Sinai Desert. And the Egyptian people, they have to take it very serious. And whatever we can do and whatever we can invest, money-wise, you know, time-wise, project-wise, you know, we have to go for it. There is no other way. You know?
Yes.
And I believe our Egyptian army will do a very good job on that. And they will clear everything. I trust them that we will win this round, you know. But, you know, of course, our government and the president, he doesn't want to waste so much time on that. We need the stability to be established very soon for the Egyptian people, because we have got another job to develop, the Egyptian persons, Egyptian human beings. There is a lot of things to be done now. And we started it, and we started it rightly, and definitely I'm looking forward for the future that the job will be done.
Yes,
you know,
definitely.
We are in a very good hands.
Well, Engineer Riad, what about the financing of this development? Is it solely dependent on the Long Live Egypt Fund? What about the other countries and the other multinational companies that are investing in the Suez Canal area, and that Egypt and the Egyptian government has signed many memorandums of understandings and many agreements with? Do they have as well the means and the ability to actually finance the development of this area?
Definitely, I believe, you know, whatever money we got and whatever, you know, sources we have, you know, it has to be devoted for this project, because we shouldn't underestimate the value of that project, you know, and we have to see about it that this is very important for every individual and for all of us. And to develop Sinai Desert, it should be our priorities, and it should be adopted by the individuals and by the masses. And I believe, you know, that the Egyptian people are very nationalist, and they will respond definitely, and we believe in our destiny with our president.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Amir, whenever we talk about Sinai, we always think of the Palestinian issue and the conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis. And we've seen that escalating over the past period due to the American president's decision regarding Jerusalem, declaring it the capital of Israel. And we've seen the Egyptian efforts in terms of reconciliation among the Palestinians. The escalations taking place within the Palestinian cause, does that have any sort of effect on the security and safety situation of our Sinai Peninsula?
Well, let's not forget that before this operation, we have contacted the Palestinians, I mean Hamas in particular, in Gaza. And we made it clear that for them that the choice that they have made in the past by following Turkey and following Qatar was the wrong choice. And Egypt is the big brother, whether they like it or not, but this is the fact, and we are the mediators in peace. I think that there is some change happening in the Hamas infrastructure there. They were first, they were supplying arms to Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis and all the terrorists in Sinai. Lately, we have seen in our media, I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Qatar, he was kicked out of a visit there in Gaza by protesters in Gaza. From my knowledge, there is a huge fracture there inside Hamas. Those who are following Iran and inciting them to escalate with Israel, and those who are following Turkey and inciting them to continue to supply arms. But I think that Egypt gave a clear message to our friends there in Gaza that they have to calculate very well this time. The borders, let's say the borders with Gaza are secured, the tunnels were destroyed, and this is again in the mechanism and the planning that we have isolated the defense isolated the part concerning Rafah, Sheikh Zayed, and the Palestinian Rafah also, and Gaza itself. So there is a huge geographic gap or no man's land, and it's controlled by our army. So we have ensured that if they decide to escalate that on our side, it will be a wrong decision to take. So I think that now we have different course. We are working in the mediating peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. This is a course. There is another course that says it's the mediation between the Palestinians themselves, so they could be unified to negotiate. And there is also our economic prosperity. We are working on constructing defense there to secure the living there of the people. As you have seen in the last statement of our own armed forces, there was plenty of people arrested, and then they were released because they were suspected of collaborating with the terrorists. So that means that we are carefully dealing with this. If anyone is willing to escalate in Egypt the problem that's happening in Gaza or between Israel and Gaza, I think that we will not accept it anymore. We are a sovereign country, and we give the message clearly, and we're ready to give it more clearly again and again. But still, we hope that the Gaza problem will be solved, so because it will be very important for us to have the Gaza problem solved and security established again in Sinai, because they're related.
Yes, definitely. Engineer Riad, now talking about this development in Sinai, now we are trying to develop this important area in Egypt, but we're also trying to develop the rest of the already inhabited Egypt, the already existing 6%. Will that constitute too much of a load on the Egyptian economy?
Even so, but it is a priority. It is an important issue. We cannot tolerate on it. And definitely maybe it will help us, to move out of the Nile Valley to go somewhere else. And we need it, actually. We shouldn't build on the Nile Valley anymore. It is full, and the infrastructure is demolished, And, to establish new areas and so is needed. And we are increased by 2-point-something million people per year. We have to take this into consideration. 50 years ago, how much we were and how much we are. Let us talk about if we are planning for 20 years more, then we are going to be another 50 or 60 million people more. Definitely we need to move out. We need to put in new areas and you have to plan for, and this is the right place, to exist. That is Sinai Desert, This, our eastern border has to be secured. We don't want to have this repeat again, that these people penetrate from all sorts of areas, these terrorists, and the plan of our enemies is going to be succeeded. We cannot afford it, and we should learn out of it that this area has to be developed. Full stop.
Yes. Well, should we also expect that the Zohr gas field and such projects, should we expect that the fruit or the profit coming out of these projects would actually also help in financing the development in Sinai and in Egypt?
Everything which we can devote it for this is okay, but we have to depend on ourselves. We have to depend on our work. We have to depend on our education to develop the Egyptian person, and the Egyptian population has to be developed in such ways that they can be producing for their own benefit. And definitely our economy has to depend on the individuals and on the masses. And we have to establish industries, agriculture, we have to work. And as I said, always, we are 100 million people. We need the output of 100 million people per hour, per 8 hours per day, and we need it. This, the only way is to generate money to enable us to depend on ourselves, you know, and this is going to be our freedom.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely have witnessed some sort of stability over the past few years, and now Egypt is bracing itself to take this one more step forward and actually start achieving growth. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
As Egypt's economy stabilizes, now is the right time to unleash the country's economic potential. The shared vision of transforming Egypt into a modern, fast-growing and prosperous economy is within reach. Reforms that create shared opportunity for Egypt's greatest asset, its young and growing population, can help translate this vision into reality and ensure that the aspirations of all Egyptians are fulfilled. With the economy stabilizing successfully, now is the time to unleash Egypt's true economic potential. Output was constrained by a growth model characterized by economic self-reliance and an expansive welfare system based on blanket subsidies. This resulted in preference for direct and industrial policy, an unusually significant role for the state in employment and in investment. As a result, Egypt was unable to take full advantage of the opportunities from globalization and private sector-led growth. This long-standing overall policy framework, accompanied by rigid exchange rates and fuel prices, led to a loss of external competitiveness. However, the Egyptian authorities initiated an economic reform program that is now gathering momentum. The program is being supported by an IMF agreement that provides policy advice and financing to ease the required adjustment. The key elements of the program include the floating of the exchange rate in 2018, necessary to reverse the loss of competitiveness of Egypt's exports. The float eliminated the parallel market and created incentives for domestic production. There's also been a reduction in fuel subsidies and the introduction of the value-added tax, or the VAT. This has freed up resources, the better to provide social assistance to those who need it the most. While fuel subsidies benefit the rich more than the poor, the program has included decisive monetary policy actions by the Central Bank of Egypt, including higher interest rates to limit unavoidable rise in inflation from these adjustments. There have also been reforms to improve business climate and provide critical support to encourage private sector investment, including the introduction of the new investment and industrial licensing laws. These bold measures are translating into recovery in economic growth, lower budget and current account deficits, as well as gradual easing of inflation. GDP growth rose to 5.2% for the most recent quarter, for which data is available, and inflation has dropped from its peak of 33% in July to 22% in December of 2017. GDP growth is projected at nearly 5% for 2017-18 as a whole, and to rise further to 5.5%. Public debt is also expected to decline from more than 100% of GDP to 87% in 2018-19. Inflation is also expected to decline further to around 13% by the end of 2018.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Amir, first of all, talking about growth, whether politically or economically, we are now entering the first few days of the presidential elections and the campaigning that starts now and is slated to be held on the 26th till the 28th of March. First of all, how would you expect this process to go, and what are the main things that Egyptians should be actually on the lookout for?
Well, as I said before, we have started a task with President Sisi in his first election in 2014, and we haven't completed yet. And we are in an economic reconstruction. Our security is being reconstructed. Everything is being reconstructed again. So I think that we have also paid a heavy price in all sacrifices. And I remember when President Sisi held the conference where he announced that he will be presented again for the election. He gave this, the speech, and before giving the speech he said, "I would like to salute the Egyptian people." And I think that he said clearly that I had the bet on the people, and they were exactly as I was waiting for. The people, the Egyptian people are now, after what happened, they call it the Arab Spring, I mean, in the revolution of 25th of January 2011, the people are very aware now of the circumstances. They made a clear decision in 2013 when they ousted the dictatorship of the Muslim Brotherhood, and now I think they have decided to take the burden and to take the heavy task. So I think that in the coming days, the people, the Egyptian people, will be more concerned about economic growth, about the developments in Sinai, the internal security, and I think that, as I said it also, President Sisi spent 3 days giving an account to the people, to the Egyptian people on direct, live on TV, in open conference about his work during the 24 years, I mean the 4 years. So I think I didn't see other candidates making the same thing. I think that the tasks are very heavy, and we need someone who knows how to accomplish the mission, accomplish the job, a man of honor, a man of a military duty, who knows that the job has to be done without retreat. It's be or not to be. So I think the people of Egypt now are aware that we have the right man in the right position now, because it's a question of a nation, whether it will survive or not. We cannot gamble anymore. We cannot waste time anymore. So I think that we are taking the right course. I repeat, the price is heavy, the task is heavy, but this is how strong nations are being built. Yes. So we are in the right track.
Well, Engineer Riad, the presidential elections will be held with President Sisi running for office. Also, head of Al-Ghad party, Mr. Mustafa, is actually also running. Now, to guarantee fair representation of both candidates, what would you say is the role that should be played by the media in actually giving equal chances to both candidates, and how can, or what are the bases that the Egyptian citizens should be actually evaluating both candidates on?
Well, actually, we know President Sisi. You know, the other candidate is not well known to us. But anyway, this is democracy, and we have to leave it, you know, for the election, for the choice of the Egyptian people, because I believe our president and our system is, you know, is based on democracy and, you know, and based on respect, and we have to respect the outcome of this, you know, competition, if I may say, you know. But definitely we are looking forward that the continuity of what has been happening in the last 4 years, you know, to be continued, because this is, we are in the right track as far as I, you know, as I see it, and the strategy which has been put, and the development, and the appreciation of time from our president, which is showed to everybody, which I believe, you know, this we should adopt such a principle, you know, by the individual, and we have to know the precious of the time to enable us to develop our country and to develop our future and to develop our children, and, you know, and to go on, you know, seeing our country among the best of the countries in the world.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Amir, now you've mentioned that the price that we already paid it's a big price, and we're probably still going to have to pay a huge price as well in the near future to see the country develop both politically and economically. Now, with all the political activities that have been taking place over the past 4 years, we've seen Egypt really taking very much of a leap forward. During the past week or so, we've seen the Egyptian foreign minister dealing with the Palestinian issue, meeting European foreign ministers, meeting Arab foreign ministers as well. Do you feel that we're not just working on issues that are related to the Egyptian sovereignty and political life, but also other neighbors as well, such as Palestine?
It's not only the Israeli-Palestinian question, it's also, let's not forget the Libyan question.
Yes.
Libya is a failed state now. They don't have a real government, and this is an extremely dangerous situation for us. I think that I will talk, of course, about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but I think that our diplomacy about Libya had made significant progress. At the beginning, no one wanted to recognize that there were terrorist movements there. No one in the West wanted to hear the name of General Khalifa Haftar. Egypt's diplomacy kept saying to the West that the flow of migrants, the trafficking of all these illegal immigrants there, even slave trafficking took place there. We gave them the clear message that Libya has to have a unified regular army with a command, and is General Khalifa Haftar. And I was in France, of course, they never wanted to hear his name. And then now President Macron met him. I think this is the result of Egypt's mediation. Because we have highlighted that this is the man that who should lead the forces there to combat terrorism. There is another step diplomatically that Egypt is working on concerning this file, is the lifting the embargo on the arms for the regular army. They have imposed this embargo on the UN against Gaddafi, where Gaddafi is gone now. Now there is terrorist movements. We have to help the army to fight back. So I think we are working on it. I think that our diplomacy and our minister, Samir Shukri, is working on it. Concerning the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we are working also with a certain mechanism. Is that in Gaza they have to recognize that President Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen is the legal representative of the Palestinians. And this unity is a matter of life for them, because in the Israeli government no one will sit with two branches and one of them is launching missiles and the other one is trying to gain some land. So it won't work like that. So I think that they have to listen to Egypt on this track, that we have to unify the Palestinians first, to make them understand that they have to make reconciliation, sacrifices, put aside all the differences, and the most important thing, they have to find a solution for all this infiltration from Qatar and Turkey and Iran. They have to work within the course, working with Egypt and Jordan. Why they are being separated like that? It won't work like that. The money will not help Gaza anymore. We heard the facts that since the last war between Gaza and Israel, Qatar promised funding all the infrastructure, and one penny was not spent there. They gave them promises and they did nothing about it. So I think the people of Gaza deserve better life like that. I think that the leaders there have to work on the reconciliation. We are there for them. Our diplomacy is working on it because, as you see, the construction of the settlements, the U.S. Embassy is moving in 2019. Now they are saying, no, it will be in May 10th. So time is not in the favor of the Palestinians.
Yes.
So we're giving this message. But I repeat again, the Libyan problem is a huge burden, and it has to be dealt with. And I think that Minister of Foreign Affairs, Samir Shukri, is a very well-experienced person to deal with it.
Yes, indeed he is. Well, Engineer Riad, it's not just the political life that Egypt has really taken strides in, but also economically. A lot of people are witnessing the nuclear Daba plant, also the 3 electrical plants that have been constructed here in Egypt, the exploration of the natural gas in the Mediterranean, and we're also witnessing recently Egypt signing the $15 billion gas deal with Israel. So a lot of people are actually looking at these projects and seeing how seriously Egypt is really attacking this energy sector. How would you evaluate these recent steps taken by the Egyptian government in the energy and gas fields?
Okay, we are, in a situation that we have to improve our standard of living. And definitely every project which is going to add to the Egyptian economy is needed. And definitely we are looking forward that the energy is one of the subjects which we are attacking it to enable us to develop our country. Without energy, we cannot go forward. We cannot industrialize our country. As I said, it's a huge country, big population, and we need the infrastructure which has been neglected for years. It has to be, it now is seen about it and established. And thank God we are having some very positive steps in this direction. And hopefully the future will enable us to, to see the results of all of this and the outcome of this kind of projects.
Yes, definitely. Well, as you've mentioned, all of these, this really tackling and dealing with the energy sector and the development of Sinai and really encouraging foreign investors to come and invest in Egypt. But being a member of the Egyptian Industrial Federation, what about our local industries? Do they feel that they will be supplied with enough energy and enough gas to actually operate? Do they feel that there's a new fertile soil for starting new industries or developing already existing ones?
Definitely in the last 30 years, industries has been shrunk in Egypt, and definitely now is a time that we will go forward and we have to industrialize ourselves. We have to give a job for our masses, and definitely energy and such things will help us, and the infrastructure will help the individual Egyptians. And I am, very positive, about the future. But definitely we need to, our financial, institutes, banks and so on, has to have a, more active role with the Egyptian, new business people, which we want to develop new business people. We want to develop more business people. And we have to encourage them by, financing their projects through our, financing institutes and so on. This has to be seen about it. We see, sometimes we see big numbers of profits on the banking sectors. I see it as a negative thing. But definitely bank has to make money, but at the same time has to invest and has to encourage and to develop new business people. We need more business people in our country. We are 100 million people. We cannot have, we need business people. We need to develop this sector very much.
Yes. Well, what about the Egyptian Central Bank and its initiative of actually encouraging the small and medium enterprises? Do you feel that it has done enough, or there's still more to be done?
There's more to be done. It's definitely, look at the, well, bank is a bank. He doesn't want to lose his money, Look at, we have to ease it a little bit. We have to take the risk. We have to, a little bit of a risk as well will enable us to develop big industries and so on,
Yes. Well, Dr. Amir, final question. With the situation in Syria and Turkey, the olive branch operation, we are securing our western borders and we're securing our eastern borders. Should the Egyptian government be wary or cautious about such an operation coming from this side?
Well, we're in the Middle East. Let's resume many things. With a neighbor like Erdogan, you have to be very cautious. Worried, of course, listen, in all the armed forces, you have to have the awareness that it's a matter of life or death. That's it. So I think that we are well prepared. We know his intentions. We have excellent relations with Cyprus, with Greece. We have signed a deal with Israel also. So we have, and this is what President Sisi said, it was meant, now we have secured all the relations with the country, with our neighboring countries.
Yes.
So if he will dare to do something, he has very, very minimal cards to play. Now he went into Syria, but the Russians and President Vladimir Putin forced him to stop the war now. So I think that we are very well prepared.
Yes.
And we are capable of pushing and repelling any threat to our sovereignty.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you have seen and as you have heard, there are a lot of political and economic developments taking place involving Egypt by the day, and we're definitely going to be focusing more in the coming period as well on the presidential elections slated for March. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. Before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Engineer Samir Riad, member of the Egyptian Industrial Federation. I'd also like to thank very much Dr. Sharif Amir, Professor of the Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.